Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today we have another Indianapolis team report with another top player joining us. And I am joined by Cortex. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on the channel, Eddie. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the channel. For those who don't know you, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure, my name is Cortex, or Nate. I'm from Southern California. I just started playing VGC officially in tournaments, and VGC 2020, Dallas was my first one where I got top 16. Gotten a couple top cut finishes since then. One of them was top 8 in Collinsville, and then this most recent top 16 finish at the latest regional. Let's see, I lead a marketing team for my work and play piano on the side, and yeah, I like playing VGC.
Wow. So just incredibly talented all around. Um, I think that you might be one of the best VGC players that no one has heard of. Cutting three of your first four regionals is absolutely insane. Um, Even though you don't have like that top four finals finish yet, I fully expect that to come. Maybe within the next month. Uh, but yeah, so I guess let's talk about the team that you used. So you used this team to get all the way to top 16 at Indianapolis Regionals, maybe the biggest regional of the year. Uh, and it is wild. There are so many crazy things. How did you build this team?
Yeah, so the way I like to look at teams is I like to look at what's popular in the meta, and I try to build something that has a really strong matchup spread into that. So I try to build some anti-meta teams, and I try to take advantage of closed team sheets in a way where I can catch a lot of people off guard with surprise KOs and things like that. And I've tried to do that for the last few regionals. I think I really like to make good meta calls into the tournament, and I think that this team was one that really paid off in that respect. So starting off with Kyurem-White and Calyrex Shadow, I thought that Kyurem-White had a really good matchup spread into a lot of the restricted Pokemon, and it had a couple weak matchups that as if you covered for those, I think it could be a really strong choice. So some of the most popular restricteds being Kyogre, Groudon. Kyurem is really good into those. It's really it's got a decent matchup into Calyrex Shadow. It's really good into Rinja Sun with the team that I built. It's good into Yveltal. Has a pretty decent matchup into some slower Trick Room teams like Calyrex Ice and Palkia. And I would say that the restricteds that it doesn't like the most are Zacian and Solgaleo. And so I built those teams kind of around that aspects to cover for those weak points because Kyurem-White does a lot of damage. It's got 170 base special attack. I was running it with Modest. And one kind of core idea that the team kind of hinged around was the idea of Calyrex Shadow and Speed Swap with Kyurem-White. And so what this allows Kyurem to do is it allows to surprise snipe one-shot Zacian. It allows it to one-shot Thundurus before it can get off Airstreams, one-shot Yveltal. And also in combination with Calyrex Shadow's as one or unnerve ability, if a Rinja Sun player leads Groudon Charizard against you, which they would often do in a game one scenario, you can just speed swap Max Rockfall the Charizard, and because of Unnerve, the Charty Berry doesn't activate, so you'll get that one-hit KO, and then the game is pretty much unwinnable from there. If they have Grimmsnarl in the back with Scary Face to try to slow you down and take you out with Zacian, you can bring Indeedee in the back with Psychic Terrain to stop that. And of course, there's not really much they can do from that point. You can just click Hailstorm and Max Quake and pretty much win the game from there. So that's kind of the idea of where the team came from. It was a really just kind of a more hyper offensive team. I feel like this team really paid off if you led correctly and you just made the right plays. I think that this team could be anything that was good into the metagame. My team building partner for this regional that I like to prep with a lot was actually Adrian Hurley, who also did really well. He got top 16. He had a 8-1 really solid Swiss run. He ended up using Reshiram and Calyrex Ice. So we both kind of team built each other. He actually considered running this team himself, but he decided to switch kind of last. It was like a few days before the regional. We thought that the other team was a pretty solid choice going into it too. So he ended up going with that. I ended up going with this. In the end, I'm happy with how we both did. Yeah, I guess I can go into talking a little bit about each member of the team. Some moves and EV. So starting with Kyurem-White here. So you have Blizzard, Draco Meteor, Earth Power, and Ancient Power. You notice there's no Protect, and I didn't think Protect was necessary with Tailwind and with Indeedee's Follow Me support. Blizzard's really mandatory. You hear Groudon, so many things for super effective coverage. Draco Meteor is a main stab attack, and you use it to drop attack, versus Calyrex Ice Trick Room teams. Earth Power is just really good. It hits a lot of the metagame for super effective coverage with Blizzard and Earth Power. And then Ancient Power was for that key Charizard matchup. And also many Incineroar were running Shuckle Berry. And, there were not the Calyrex on my team was not always going to be on the field at the same time. And so the Max Rockfall could just one-shot the Incineroar, whereas I didn't have to rely on Max Quake because Shuckle Berry would obviously half that damage, and Max Wormwind didn't quite get it, so Max Rockfall would pick it up, and I wouldn't have to worry about any parting shots coming out from that. And so I'll go on to the next mon and then kind of work towards my last mon that I added. So Calyrex Shadow, it's got Astral Barrage, Speed Swap, and Prison Trick Room. Astral Barrage was, I think, the only offensive move that I really needed. Expanding Force would have been nice too. When I was putting this team together, I definitely needed a Trick Room matchup. Kyurem was really good into Trick Room already on its own, but having Imprison Trick Room helped with that as well. And Trick Room was also a nice move to have against other HO teams because they would go for Tailwind and I would go for Trick Room, and then I would, win the game from there with the speed advantage going into the following turns. So that worked out pretty nicely as well. But the Imprison Trick Room was mainly for the Trick Room matchup. If I could prevent a Trick Room turn 1 and then meanwhile do a big ton of damage with Kyurem, there wasn't much they could do to come back from that on turn 2. NDD Female was next, going alongside protecting Kyurem. The defense EVs are to always live a Zacian Behemoth Blade no matter what, and Psychic Cetus to buffer its special defense and just make it into an overall tank to protect it from big hits in the metagame. I think that the defense investment was really important just to always live a Behemoth Blade. I wouldn't really change that. I did consider safety goggles because I knew that more players were going to run Venusaur this tournament, and that was something that we considered. But I ended up just going with Psychic Seed because I thought I was more consistent in more matchups, and I feel like I could just lead NDD Kyurem and just go for Hailstorm, follow me, and be okay with taking a Sleep Powder onto NDD for the turn. So that's what I ended up going over. The moveset is pretty standard, but it was definitely an integral part of the team. Talonflame was next. So Talonflame was an interesting choice that I selected over the popular Whimsicott or Tornadus that you might see. Whimsicott would probably fit on this team a little bit better. So this Talonflame, I really liked it better than Whimsicott, specifically for the typing and for its ability to burn Zacian and Solgaleo. It was really integral in those matchups. And it also had the really important fire cover. So for example, after one Flare Blitz, Calyrex Shadow could pick up Zacian with Astral Barrage. So that ended up being pretty important in a few matchups. I actually originally had Overheat in the Flare Blitz slot, and it was special Talonflame. But later on, I realized that sometimes I would get into certain situations where I would want Ditto to come in, and I could reliably just KO myself with Flare Blitz and pick the turn where Ditto would come into that slot. So I ended up going with Flare Blitz to give myself a little bit more control over Ditto endgames. And so, what probably the most surprising thing on the team is the Custat Berry with the Endure combo. To explain this tech a little bit, it actually won me a few sets throughout the tournament. It overperformed. I was very happy with it. So the way Custat Berry works is that when you get to 1/4 health or lower, it'll give your next move priority within its bracket. So it'll just make you go first within your bracket. And so if you use Endure, you always live with 1 HP. Of course, you'll hit that Custat Berry proc. And why this was important is because a lot of times I would go for Tailwind in the beginning of the game, and I would do a lot of damage with Kyurem. Some people would preserve their Zacian in the back to where they would wait for Tailwind to die down. And what many people don't know is that Custat Berry actually doesn't activate until the turn that you use a move. So a lot of times I could get to 1 HP or get low on health with the defensive investment that I had. I could live like a Life Orb, Regieleki, Electroweb, and then I could switch back out. And then on a crucial turn, when in the late game, I could priority Tailwind, even with Gale Wings gone. So it was kind of to get around the disadvantage of using Gale Wings. I could surprise people with the late game Tailwind. And a lot of people, they would adjust in a game 2 scenario. If they got swept by Tailwind game 1, they would go for Fake Out plus Airstream or plus Max Move into the Talonflame. Endure has the same priority as Protect. So I would just Endure, they would Fake Out, Airstream, I would live the double up, and then turn 2, I would priority Tailwind, and then proceed to probably win the game from there. One key thing with Endure is that, I guess it takes, it takes very careful planning in terms of when to use it. And, I remember there was one game where I used Endure, and it was actually in a Trick Room matchup. it was a team that was pretty fast but had a trick room mode. And I remember using Endure, switching back Talonflame out, and then there was I think it was a Solgaleo or something that was like very low in the left on the field, and then at a later turn, custom activated, and I used it with Flare Blitz, for the only time in the tournament, and took that KO. So that was pretty cool. Rounding out the team is Ditto. So I think Ditto is actually very versatile in the metagame, and really helps the team with a good amount of matchups. So for example, against Zacian, it's really good. You copy a Zacian, that can be instantly game winning. A lot of times, I would even be okay with just, sometimes if I led Kyurem and NDD or something, I would just be okay with maybe taking one knockout with Kyurem and then switching, immediately into Ditto just to get it already set up for the end game. And so I think Ditto is, it gives you the ability to make up game plans on the fly. It's really versatile. Copying any restrictor is really good. It can effectively give you 3 restricteds in a game. If you have Kyurem, Calyrex, Ditto, and then you have Tailwind or NDD, I think that can be pretty powerful. And Ditto can win one, as long as it copies something offensive, it can win 1v1 pretty assuredly against any counterpart that it copies. And Urshifu was the last one that I added. Urshifu was a few slots, but I ended up going with that because it's really good into Incineroar and Porygon too, as it can one-shot both of them. And this team needed a little bit of help with that. Incineroar, you can kind of see the Kyurem is the only thing that can really hit it for big damage. So people can preserve the Incineroar for the late game, and it can kind of be problematic if Kyurem takes too much damage or goes down. And so Urshifu was a nice fallback to that. And also Porygon, this team didn't have a huge way to deal significant damage to Porygon too. Sometimes, depending on the spread, you can KO it with Helping Hand Wormwind or Helping Hand Blizzard. But Urshifu was a nice way just to be able to one-shot it. You can just, even if you don't take it out immediately, you can kind of just save it in the back and take it out, in a late game scenario. That last move is Fire Punch. As you can see, that's another tech move. So what I realized is, in order for a coverage move to be worthwhile on Urshifu, it has to actually resist both Surging Strikes and Close Combat. It's not enough for the coverage move to be 4 times effective. So like if you wanted to use Fire Punch against Ferrothorn, Close Combat actually does the same amount of damage just because of the base power and the same type attack bonus. And so the only situation where I can really think of is maybe Tapu Fini, because it resists Surging and Close Combat. Poison Jab would be good there. But, I don't think the team really had too many worries about Tapu Fini. I don't think I really played a Tapu Fini at all. And so Fire Punch was actually to get the one shot on Zacian in the sun. Urshifu actually has a small chance to KO Zacian with Close Combat, just regardless. But it was nice to have that because I played quite a few Sun teams throughout the tournament. And that did come into play where I was able to KO a Zacian with Fire Punch and just kind of do whatever with the other slot and, pave the way for Kyurem. So that's the team kind of in a nutshell. I guess the common leads would be, NDD Kyurem, Talonflame Kyurem, Calyrex Shadow Kyurem. A lot of times I could kind of preserve the info on the speed swap until like a game 2 or a game 3, by just going a more typical Tailwind or NDD plus Kyurem. And then, I would save the speed swap Kyurem for a little bit later in the set and just go for a speed swap Max Quake into the Zacian, which did win me a couple games. So that's the team in a nutshell. I'm really happy with how it played, and that's a summary.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool team. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. And I mean, it sounds like you had a really solid idea of what everything's doing. If you were to change anything going back, would you stick with the exact same team, or was there anything that you would change?
No, I don't think I would change anything really about the team. I'm really happy with. I think it's like a pretty close to a perfect 6, perfect 5 maybe. Urshifu was kind of the last slot in contention. I can see that maybe swapping it out for something else. But I think if I during the regional, I remember they made us play top 16 right after the Swiss. That day. I had gotten like an hour of sleep the night before, and I had just crashed from taking an energy shot to make it through the last few rounds. So, it would have been nice to go back, get some rest, and prepare for the following top 16 match. I don't know if it would have played out differently. I had a really great game with Carson. He played fantastically. It really gave my team a hard time with the sets that he was running. But yeah, I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think that, I could have gone maybe deeper had I played it out a little bit differently. But I definitely think that I could have won any matchup going into top 16.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Carson a couple days ago, and he was saying that yeah, like if you had a full night to prep the matchup, he thought you had it like he thought his matchup was unfavorable, but he managed to get away with it because it happened right after Swiss. Um, but yeah, I definitely could have seen this team going further. I definitely want to see other people or you. I don't know if you're going to any more events this year, but I'd love to see this team sort of continue to see play because I don't think it's just a I don't think it was just a meta call. You know, this team looks really well rounded and just has answers to seemingly everything.
Yeah, I'm planning to go to Vancouver Regionals and Ohio as well, so you'll see me there. I'm not sure if I'll bring the same team. I know that there are several, techs on it that are kind of out in the water now, and so those are there. But despite that, though, I still think it's got some really solid game plans, even if you know about them. Actually, as a matter of fact, one of my first loss in Swiss was to William Marks, Monkey VGC, I believe. Yeah, so he beat me. It went to a game 3. And by that point, he knew the team well. He knew the techs. And later on in the Swiss rounds, I actually ended up playing his team building partner. I believe it was Preston Gadling, Hectic VGC. He used the exact same 6 as his partner, and so I'm sure he informed him on the team that I was running and everything about it. And I thought it was a really hard matchup. He had a specific set that was Focus Sash Grim Snarl. With the G Max, it was offensive. That was actually pretty scary for my team alongside substitute Zacian. And so even despite the fact I was still able to win that set with Custap Talonflame in the game 3 on a pivotal turn to give my Kyurem that speed. So I think even if people know the sets, I still think that it can pull out wins even against some more difficult matchups.
Mm-hmm. And so, speaking of, do you want to talk me through how you approach some of the matchups you expected to play?
Yeah, sure. So I expected to play, Rinya Sun, Kyogre Zacian. So I guess against Rinya Sun, I told you about the speed swap onto and the rockfall into the Charizard. So if after that, most people would be pretty afraid to go Charizard. And so after that point, there's a number of ways the matchup could play out. I could lead NDD plus Kyurem, just do a lot of damage with Hailstorm, or if they went a more defensive route with Incineroar and Grimmsnarl, some cool calcs are that Helping Hand and Hailstorm will actually pick up Grimmsnarl even after a light screen, and you can also go for the Incineroar there with Rockfall. So a lot of times you would just try to take as many KOs with your Dynamax as possible to get an efficient use. Clean up with Ditto in the back. Ditto would try to copy either the Zacian or the Groudon. Either one, copying either one of them would be really good. Zacian, because if you have +2 attack, that's KOing anything, and then copying Groudon, you're getting really nice Precipice Blades onto their Zacian or Groudon because you're faster. And so, sometimes I would go that route. You can also go with Talonflame Kyurem and just go for Tailwind. If you start out in the set by using NDD, they're a little bit less. They can be a little bit afraid of bringing Grimmsnarl because they can't, use the Prankster or Thunderwave or Scary Face, especially if they see you taking knockouts with Helping Hand. So a lot of people will be dissuaded from that. So then opens up the way to go Talonflame Kyurem and just go a faster game plan route and just start taking KOs like that. So that's against Rinya Sun. Against Kyogre Swordfish teams, a lot of times I would go NDD Kyurem with Talonflame and Ditto in the back. It's definitely variable depending on what kind of Swordfish team it is. Urshifu is really good in that matchup too because it'll one-shot Zacian with Surging Strikes when it's rainy, and it'll also one-shot Kyogre with Close Combat. And so either one there, it's really good to hit. And then Calyrex Shadow usually wouldn't come to that matchup unless they don't have Tailwind, in which case, if Calyrex Shadow is the fastest thing, you don't really need to bring Tailwind. You can just kind of go NDD Kyurem and then have Ditto and Calyrex Shadow in the back, and you can just speed swap yourself to get the additional speed. And then Ditto's already fast. So that would be one way to go about that. Against Trick Room teams, of course, you have the Imprison Trick Room. If I wasn't immediately threatened by anything like Venusaur, like a Venusaur fast mode, a lot of times I would just go Calyrex Shadow and Kyurem, go for Imprison Trick Room, and then just do a lot of damage with Kyurem, probably targeting the Incineroar or the Amoonguss or whatever it was next to the setter. And then they would be locked out from Trick Room for a turn. Another way to go about it is if they did have some kind of answer to that, I would just go NDD Kyurem and then just try to take as many KOs with Kyurem and do as much damage to them before they got up Trick Room as possible. And usually it would just lead to a Mon advantage, and I would still have NDD be able to pull it out from there. You can also use Ditto in certain trigger matchups like Copy Incineroar and Parting Shot. So that's another way you can go around it. Like Calyrex Shadow teams were actually one of my most favorable matchups just because I had my own Sash Calyrex and Ditto. And so I would just kind of play that matchup by trying to set Tailwind, take some knockouts with Kyurem, and then have my own Calyrex Shadow and Ditto in the back to copy either the Calyrex Shadow or their Zacian. So that was a pretty good matchup. Unless it was like the team that Carson used, which was, yeah, definitely, I definitely didn't expect it. It was, Whimsicott with Specs Calyrex Shadow and Kyogre. And what he did against my team is a calc that I didn't know that I could have prepared for maybe is that Specs Calyrex Shadow Expanding Force in terrain actually has a chance to two-shot my Kyurem-White when it's Dynamax, which is actually really crazy. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. In the game that we played, it did two-shot it. And so it kind of threw out my whole game plan because he just led Indeedee Calyrex and he just clicked follow me and clicked Expanding Force a couple times. Even there wasn't too much I could have done about that. So that really caught me off guard. So I would say those are the most common matchups against Solgaleo and Necrozma Decimate. Not that I ever faced that. A lot of times you can just burn, go for a burn or try to target what's around it and then save Ditto or save Calyrex Shadow in the back. So you can either copy the Solgaleo or you can just save your Sash Calyrex and then two-shot it with Astral Barrage in the back. So I would say those are a couple of my game plans against that. There's, of course, some other easier matchups that, were pretty straightforward, like, Yveltal, Yveldon. And then I played John who was using Lugia and Groudon. And so, Yveltal just went really hard in that matchup. Yeah, I would say that I think those are most of the matchups that I prepared for. I thought that maybe there was a chance Reshiram could be used because Adrian was considering it. I wasn't sure if other people were considering it too. And so Kyurem just happened to be, pretty solid into Reshiram as well, just as a side result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good overview of the game plans that you did, or the game plans that you used to counteract the metagame. Were there any notable matchups that you wanted to talk about over the course of your tournament run?
Yeah, sure. So there was one. Let's see. I had in my matchup against Jerry Woods in Swiss. He was my round 6 opponent. Well played to him. I won the first game, and then he adjusted really well in the second game. I led double restricted, so I led Kyurem-White and Calyrex Shadow, and he led Defiant Thundurus. I actually thought it was Prankster Thundurus because I played him in a side event the day before, and I thought I had seen Prankster Thundurus. And so I don't know if he swapped it out or it was I just missed that. But it was Defiant Thundurus and Zacian. Yeah, he just I thought that my Kyurem was in danger from a Zacian Behemoth Blade, and I didn't want to use Speed Swap yet because he could also I didn't know if he was sub or if he could just protect an Airstream. So I switched it out, and so and then I thought he was Prankster Thundurus, and so I feared a Thunder Wave or an Eerie Impulse into my Kyurem, so that's why I didn't leave it in. So I switched it out, and then he actually just maxed it, went for Airstream, went for Behemoth Blade, and then the game just kind of got away from there. I couldn't really come back from that. And I remember at the end of that game, I actually wanted him to, now that I knew that it was Defiant Thundurus, I wanted him to lead the exact same thing because I hadn't revealed Speed Swap yet, and I wanted him to leave his Zacian open on the first turn again. And so I actually did something that I haven't really done before in a tournament. I actually kind of I try to look visibly stressed. So I did the whole, that kind of a thing. And then, I took a long time picking my moves. In team preview, I waited for it to get down to the last few seconds in the red, and I just quickly, put my Monza, even though I knew exactly what I was doing. And then, on the first turn of the game, when he sent out the leads, I was like, man, I should have done something different. Turn 1, he left his Zacian open just as I had, hoped and conditioned. And I went for the Speed Swap Max Quake, and he had no more answer to my Kyurem. So that was a really memorable set for me. That was pretty good. I'm not sure what was going through his mind, but I remember
That's,
taking that
that's
game
really
because of
funny.
that. Yeah.
Those the SoCal actors rubbing off on you a little bit.
Yeah. There was one more set. I think that I'd mentioned earlier against Preston. I played the same team twice, and yeah, that I would just say that in it was like a game six, right? Game six versus the same team. Everybody thought that they knew everybody's techs, and that last game, on one of the final turns of the game, I just so happened to preserve the Custap Berry priority tailwind. I had my Kyurem out against Zacian. He thought he was faster. He thought he had the game sealed. I got the priority tailwind up, knocked out the Zacian with the Kyurem, and that was another really memorable set for my run.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really scary team. Like you said, that like you talked about the Grimmsnarl. They called it the Demon Grimmsnarl because it was catching so many people off guard.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even knowing, I guess, yeah, even in a situation where it felt like you guys had perfect information, you still managed to find a way to win. That Talonflame set is terrifying. I like Custap Berry is such a cool item, and it's cool that you managed to find such a good use for it. But yeah, so I guess those are all the questions that I had. Did you have any final words or shout outs that you wanted to give?
Yeah, just want to give a quick shout out to my team building partner, Adrian, for all the prep, and some of the other guys that I prepped with. Ryan Hebert, we prepped together. He actually ended up running an earlier version of the team at the regional. So he thought that that was a lot of fun. Definitely good games to all my opponents that I played. If you're watching this video and I saw you or I played you at the Indianapolis regional, it was a lot of fun, and the weekend was a blast. I'm definitely hoping to, I really want to go even further at a regional. My goal is to beat what I've done before. It'd really be nice to get that medal, top 4 or finalists, even higher, and I think I can do it. So I'll definitely be prepping a lot for the upcoming one, Vancouver and Internats when it comes. So you'll be catching me there.
Yeah, I'll see you there. I'm going to Vancouver as well. And like I said, this team super cool. I really encourage you to try it out. And so the rental code is on screen right now. The paste will be in the description down below. And yeah, thank you all for watching. And until next time, I will see you all later.